We are about to begin another episode of the Prosperident webinar series. From their unique perspective as dentistry's embezzlement experts, Prosperident's team brings you information you will not find anywhere else. Now sit back and relax while Prosperident's Amber Weber, Wendy Askins, and David Harris address the issues that are important to you.
Yeah. All right. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. We test this in advance and it works, and then you go live and it doesn't. Anyway, I'm going to be Wendy for the next minute and just welcome you. Okay, there's the thumbs up from Wendy. Thank you. Like to welcome everybody. Tonight's kind of interesting because we're doing something new tonight. We're going to have a guest on, and we'll introduce him a little bit more fully later. But it's Dr. Len Tau, and he's just amazing, and he's got such great ideas about reputation management for practices. So Len's got some interesting things to say, and I'll repeat something we said earlier. Even if you never think you're going to be embezzled, what Len says about defending your reputation is pretty important. So let's get started. Again, this is Wendy's slide. I'm just filling in because the audio was going a little crazy there. A few things that, oh, sorry, Amber, that's you. Let me shut up now. You're muted though.
As usual, our webinar is going to be about an hour and a half long. If you have any questions during the webinar, please use the chat window in Zoom, and we will answer as many questions as our time permits. We always try to reserve some time at the end to answer those questions live. But if you're not able to stay for the full session, this will be recorded and available tomorrow. So always feel free to watch the recording or send us a direct email for any questions that we're not able to answer during the webinar. Our good friends at Altura Periodontics always allow us to provide a continuing education credit. So that is available for those of you who are attending. And at the end of this webinar, you will get an email with a link for registration for our next webinar in January. So we're going to take a break in December, let everybody enjoy the holidays with their family and get ready for Santa coming to your house. So our next webinar is real exciting. We're going to be talking about dumb things that people think are smart. And we're going to talk about different things in our experiences and other experiences that have influenced offices to be more vulnerable and higher risk. So to go ahead and register for that early on, please visit our website, and you can go ahead and pre-register for that webinar and invite any of your friends or family that you think would be interested.
Perfect. And next month, we're back to our standard time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern. We just moved it a little bit tonight to accommodate our guests, but next month, or when I say next month, next webinar in January, we'll be back to 8 p.m. One more announcement that we have. A lot of you have taken at some point this thing called our Embezzlement Risk Assessment Questionnaire. And the Embezzlement Risk Assessment Questionnaire just got a serious makeover. There are a lot of new questions, and it really is going to approach the problem a little bit differently. As you know, this normally costs $139. The good news is you all get it for nothing. There's an email that will come out tonight at the end of our webinar. And, there are a lot of links in it, but one will be to take the questionnaire. So if you haven't done it before, you haven't done it in a while, this is really good. It's online. It takes no more than 15 minutes. And at the end, you get a score, and the score will let you know what kind of risk your practice faces. Well, our guest just joined us. We'll introduce him a little more formally later, but hi, Len, welcome. We've got an audience of a few hundred here who are all just eagerly wishing that Amber, Wendy, and I would shut up and let you talk. So we'll get to that as quickly as we can, but great to have you with us.
So tonight's topic is about healing from stealing. And so when we talked about this and really thought it out, it's similar to having a baby. So it's a long process. There's different steps involved, and many you have to have support and different thoughts. So just like pregnancy, there's a lot of range of emotions. Will everything be okay? Will this baby be healthy? What will people think? Am I going to survive after this happens in my life? So because there's a lot of sleepless nights in the first couple months of having a baby, we wanted to break this down for everybody so they understood that it's all part of a process. So after you went through and weathered the storm, and you've had this big, huge change in your life, and you welcome this new chapter into your life, you're still in shock. You're unsure what's happened to you. But the interesting thing here is you start to see some consequences beyond just the stress and the financial impact that the suspect has completed in your practice. So in the very first few months, we're going to talk about focusing on the major stuff that matters, similar how you would with a baby: sleeping, eating, feeding, and to keep your practice moving forward.
Okay, are we better?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I figured it out. It was Teams.
Oh, okay.
My Teams program. Anyway, I closed it. We're back now. Okay, this happens to be my absolute favorite time. Sorry to say that, but it is my favorite time to work with a client because they're so vulnerable, but yet at the same time, they don't realize they're in a very, very strong place where big changes are about to happen for them. And although it feels like they're going through hell, they're about to get a whole lot better than what they were before. So the first thing that we have to do is, to be honest with you, we're entering kind of urgent mode. And the very first thing we need to do is we need to keep the doors open of the practice. We've got patients that have to be seen. And we got to put on a pretty good show so that our patients don't realize that there has been some disunity in our practice. So the first thing we have to do is replace that very important person that has stolen from us. And a lot of times it actually ends up happening like that person's there in the morning and boom, they're not there in the afternoon. And no one knows that that's going to happen except for the Prosperident team that's working with the doctor and the doctor, him or herself. So we've got to make a plan to get a warm body in there to greet those patients with a smile and to carry on with our daily activities. We also need to watch our attitudes during this time. A lot of processes that we think have been happening in our office are not actually happening. Like I hear my clients say, "What do you mean I'm having deposits done once a month? That's not how it's supposed to be." You know, that's how it's been happening. So we have to allow ourselves a lot of latitude to be wrong and to understand that it's okay that we don't know that something has been going on. Another thing is that it's important for the business owner to be approachable during this time. Even though your heart is broken and you're getting a bit cynical and you're screaming or crying every day, it's important that we allow our staff members to come to us and talk to us about what they've seen and how they feel in a culture of approachability. The next thing that has to happen is we got to get control of our money. You know, being a financial person and understanding how people steal from businesses, you're going to find there are a lot of things that are out of control, and we just have to go in and find out and set up new systems and stop the bleeding so that we can move forward. Another thing is that we have to manage our public perception, and we have to manage the message that's being sent to our patients. And that's why I am so thrilled that Len is here with us tonight. Actually, I have a client who's going through this right now. It just so happens the very same day that the detective confronted and interviewed the suspect and made her aware that my client was filing legal charges against her and that she would probably be going to jail. Poof! She goes online. She makes up all kinds of different profiles under different names, although a little bit similar to each other. And she starts hammering my client with online negative reviews. And he called me. He's like, Wendy, what do I do? I'm like, well, I'm not really sure, but Len can give us those answers tonight. That's why I'm so glad he's joining us. Yeah, go ahead, David.
Well, thank you. The other focus, you know, the morning after you wake up and you realize that you've been embezzled is probably at that point, your cupboard's getting kind of bare. And we've talked in previous webinars about the things that let you know that you may have an embezzlement problem, and that embezzlement risk assessment questionnaire that I talked about a few minutes ago is a pretty good bellwether as well as to whether you're having an issue. But a lot of times the ultimate tip off is somebody realizes that their bank account is going down when they think it should be going up. So how do we get some immediate recovery of money? And the first place we go is that, and it still surprises me how many dentists don't realize they have this, you have insurance that covers employee dishonesty. Most of you probably have $25,000 of coverage. Some probably have 10,000, and maybe a few have a bigger number. But that's relatively easy money to get if you go at it the right way. And you know, it's available to you in a fairly short time. Again, if the proper field work is done first. The second place where there tends to be gold in an embezzled practice is a lot of times the accounts receivable have been neglected. And what I'm going to tell you about stealing that always surprises people is it's work. It actually takes time. And when somebody's stealing, that means they have to do one of two things. They either spend extra time working, or they neglect their primary job, which is probably being your office manager. So receivables don't get followed up on. And insurance claims may not even get sent, or they get sent and some of them get rejected by insurance companies. And what rejected means really is that they come back, the insurance company comes back and asks for something, you know, maybe it's a radiograph, and that follow-up piece never happens. So a lot of times there's the potential in a practice that's been stolen from to tickle some money fairly quickly out of the receivables and as I say, these insurance claims that haven't been paid. A suggestion, and this one really came from Wendy, I think. You probably need a specific procedure code to deal with, I'm cleaning up your accounts receivable, which is inaccurate because of embezzlement. So it's good if you know, if a patient's AR is not right and you have to fix it as part of this process, it's a good idea to have a special code for that, just so we can track that later and realize the true extent of the damage. The other thing that may be worth considering at this point is, should we be outsourcing some of this cleanup work? I mean, it can require a whole lot of staff hours. You know, one company that we've mentioned in previous incarnations of this webinar is eAssist for insurance cleanup. There are other ones as well. And there are also companies that will take your accounts receivable that are a mess and contact the patients and get as much money as they can. And this would be a really good time to look at doing some of that.
Oh yeah, the emotions that go behind it. You know, Dave, if it's okay, since we have Len here early, I'm just gonna kind of be real quick with this because I'd rather give Len more time than just
Perfect.
yak myself. Anyway, just let me say this. I know that there's a lot of guilt, and there's enough that to go around for everyone. For the doctor's family, for staff members. So, you know, my recommendation is to just take it easy on yourself, because as Dave was saying, you know, a thief spends a lot more time thinking about how to steal from you than you think about how to protect that person or how to protect yourself from being stolen. So give yourself a break on that. And I'll pass so we can have more time for Len.
Absolutely. Dentists come from a culture of accountability. You all learn early on that crap rolls downhill and you live in the valley. And as Wendy says, this is a wonderful time to give yourself a break and say, you know what, there's probably nothing I could have done that would have changed the ultimate outcome here.
So, you know, you went through the process of experiencing the shock and turmoil of what's occurred. But the one thing you have to remember here is you have staff members who also trusted the person who has stolen this money from you. So this is your opportunity to become a team, but as a practice owner to lead this team. So the key thing here is, what do you tell everybody? Well, realistically, it depends on what they know. Sometimes less can be more depending on the situation. So this is your opportunity as a leader to grow from the positive experiences and inform your team, hey, we're going to keep the practice moving forward. This is our opportunity to grow, and keep them rest assured that they will have a new team member, that they won't be trying to clean up everything on their own. So you're going to be there and try to take care of them moving forward. The main thing here with staff healing is you need to focus on the future, because there's going to be a lot of projects that come your way in the next few months. So we're still through that first month or two, but this is your opportunity to really set the tone and the culture with your staff that it's time to move forward in a positive light.
To me, the key to just talking with the staff is to understand what's going through their mind. And, you know, one thing they wonder, like, is the practice going to close? And it's your chance to, as Amber says, be the leader and say, no, you know, we're not going anywhere. You know, sure, we've had a little bit of a financial setback, but we're focused on being here and being better. The other thing, of course, and this is, I'm the person at Prosperity who gets typically the very first call that we get from a practice owner. And one of the issues, quite frankly, that comes up in a lot of cases is the spouse of the doctor blames the doctor for what has happened. And, you know, a lot of spouses sometimes, you know, they think there was something the doctor could have done. And I end up having conversations with spouses or talking to the doctor and saying, here's what you need to say to your spouse. And it's back to what Amber said, you know, this is an unequal battle. Embezzlement is destined most of the time to be won by the embezzler, at least for a period of time. And if you catch somebody who's been stealing from you for 3 months, that's not a failure. That's a success. Some people get away with it for a decade. Your spouse may not see it exactly that way. And I think part of it is to deal with the impression that they have that maybe, you know, you're good at the clinical stuff, but running the business is just a little beyond you. Okay, that's not a fair characterization. And it's really important at this time that your family be solid, that, you know, your staff and your patients see you and your spouse as a, you know, unified couple who are dealing with a problem, not people who are kind of throwing mud at each other. And the other thing that people don't often think about, if you have kids and you're stolen from, it's a great chance to reinforce some basic values with your kids. And I would say this at almost any age. I mean, my son is 18 and he's watched me since he was very small deal with some really bad people. And, you know, I've always made the point of talking to him about it and saying, you know, different people respond differently to different problems. There's a lot of positive stuff that your kids can learn from this kind of activity, and just don't forget that possibility as well. So now we're moving on. You know, you've dealt with the most immediate problems, getting some money back, what to tell staff, keeping the basic functioning of the office going on. And now by about month 3, you're starting to be able to move your planning horizon forward a little bit and deal with some slightly longer term issues.
Yeah, that's exactly how I think of this period, Dave. It's like we move from the urgent until into the, now I could at least breathe and begin to rebuild what's been lost. So the first thing is that we have the knowledge, the institutional knowledge of what's happened and how it affects everyone within our practice and within our surroundings. Also, it's an amazing time because you're going to add a new staff member. And I love what you said, David, about, we think of this as such a terrible thing. I mean, a positive side of it is that we've gotten rid of the anchor or, the person with the machete that's killing our business. We got rid of them, right? And now we get to hire somebody. We get to have some new knowledge and maybe do some restructuring, some retraining of our current staff members, training of a new person that's coming in, a new quality person, and the doctor gets some retraining as well. Because here's what often happens. The embezzler in your practice is normally the one who is the most embedded in your practice. He or she is the go-to person for everything. They know how everything works, and they're just like this with the doctor. They're really tight. What happens when the doctor leaves, or I'm sorry, when the embezzler is fired or let go, is that you find out that there are a whole lot of people who don't know anything about what's going on in your practice. And so there's a process of relearning for the entire team, the entire culture. And honestly, it falls back onto the business owner or the doctor to take charge of this and to become more active and involved in the practice. Another issue, which is really big to me, is to cultivate a culture of transparency. And I just talked to a friend the other day, and she was telling me I'm being promoted into a new position, which is fantastic, but it's a position that is a little tenuous because there's not much oversight. And I'm afraid because there isn't any oversight there, and I don't want anybody to think I'm doing anything wrong. And again, it goes back to transparency. We should all be able to ask each other with a clear heart and clear conscience what that other person is doing and ask them to explain it. And we should all have an attitude of transparency and that we want to share that information.
Wendy, I'm going to go back to something that Amber said a while ago that's really stuck with me. And I kind of rephrased what she said a little bit, but transparency is one of the first casualties of embezzlement. And you have had a toxic employee working with you that you just got rid of. They had a hidden agenda. They've done things for reasons that you didn't fully appreciate at the time, and that's all coming out now. So yeah, what you say about transparency is so true. And of course, you've now closed up this hole in your pocket. And once you get past the first couple of months of everything being urgent, it's the time to look at what's sometimes called your revenue cycle. And that really means the series of events that put money in your pocket, and find the things that are wrong. And they're going to be there. Again, the thief was busy stealing and not doing their real job. So things have been neglected. When you look at the important events in the chain, the ones that tend to fall by the wayside, first of all, in having efficiency in your recare. And Amber, who was once a poor but honest hygienist, knows this really well. If recare suffers, eventually it will reach your chair. If you're not getting the throughput of people into hygiene, the dental needs that they have will not be identified. And a lot of times when a dentist has openings, the real source is hygiene. So it's the other one that tends to fall by the wayside is reactivation of people who were patients and just stop coming for whatever reason. You know, almost always there's some revenue potential there. And the other thing that tends to get flattened out a little bit when stealing is going on in the immediate aftermath is the marketing activity. And it's a good time to look at what you're doing and make sure that you're getting value for the dollars you spend, and that, you know, that new patient flow is there. The other thing on the financial side is sometimes it's possible to get money back from the thief. And this is about the time when, if it's going to happen, that will start. Very few thieves can write you a check and pay you back what they stole, but, you know, hopefully they can at least start making a monthly payment towards you. Obviously that's something your attorney needs to be heavily involved with, but we have a lot of clients who have been stolen from and are getting some amount of money back from the people who did it. And of course there are receivables, and we'll probably tackle this more fully in a future webinar, but receivables are all about systems. It's about collecting copays. It's about sending people statements regularly. And it's about somebody in your staff getting on the phone and calling people who owe money and working out with them how to pay up. So the point here is not just to dump increasing hours, staff hours into the problem. It's to have those systems in place. If the systems aren't in place, then that's when your receivables become what I would call a time pick.
You know, Dave, I really love what you're talking about there, because it kind of hits me is that it's not even just if you've been through embezzlement, but, you know, I've been a practice manager before, and I know there are times when you're low on cash flow, and it's like, okay, where can I go where I can get the most liquidity?
Yeah, it's, you know, embezzlement is one cause, but there are lots of practices that are suffering right now with cash flow issues. And, you know, sometimes embezzlement is one of the proximate causes. COVID's another one.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of offices had 2 months of downtime, and, you know, they furloughed the staff and some systems kind of fell apart, and they're now trying to pull them back together. So yeah, my comment's applicable to a lot of circumstances. I mean, we chose embezzlement recovery as the theme, but absolutely, you know, when money's not coming in, there's a reason.
Yeah. Okay, so back to embezzlement. We've been through hell. We've learned how to walk again. Now Amber's going to teach us how to shine as we move forward.
So just like we talked about, this is like having going through pregnancy and having a newborn. You know, at the 6 to 12 month mark, hopefully you have some breathing room. No more sleepless nights. It's just like your practice is now like your new baby. You're growing and learning and figuring out what needs to happen in your practice. So the big thing here, I was raised on a ranch in Wyoming. So, you know, we got to close that barn door, keep everything smooth sailing, clean, healthy, because if we let too much, you know what, hit the ground, it gets to smelling, and the chickens don't crow at dawn. So with this, with closing that barn door, you've been working on building a solid foundation, and now it's time to look at the details of your new practice. So I always tell practices that the difference is in the details here. This goes from how you handle your patients to main thing with your staff. Develop that daily closing of the barn door to make sure that your staff has accountability, everything's safe, your software, your physical location, and even like Len's going to talk about your social media, your reputation that's going to help promote and grow this business for you. The other thing here is you went through having a toxic staff member. So part of that closing the barn door is make sure you invest in good, healthy staff members in the future. So educate yourself and your team, have everything in writing, do great job descriptions, have team members be aware of what's expected of them, not just verbally, but also in writing. And then have good follow-ups with them. Let them know how they're doing, areas of improvement, and use that as to be the leader in the practice to allow that team to grow and for your barn to become more healthy and stay clean and fresh. The other thing is refining your communications as a team. So how are you going to communicate the health of the practice? How are you going to collect that copay? How are you going to keep the financial agreements healthy in your practice? How are you going to keep your community involvement healthy and the involvement with your team? So really just look at the difference in all the details. A practice is a multifaceted business. So it's not just about taking care of patients and doing dentistry. It's a well-rounded business that you need to really look at all those details.
So well said. Well, at this point, it gives me tremendous pleasure to introduce a friend of mine. This is Dr. Len Tau. Len is a practicing dentist, although I think he said to me that he's kind of winding down that part of his life and focusing on some business interests that he has. And one of the things that Len is known for is helping people get good reviews. I mean, this is such a new and emerging area, Len, because 15 or 20 years ago, this was stuff nobody thought of. And now I'm sure you have a better way to say it, but practices live or die based on their online reputation. So I think I speak for the audience when I say I'm just fascinated by what's going to come next. So what I'm going to do now is something we've never done here. I'm going to turn over control to Len, and he's going to run his slideshow now. Gosh, how do I do that? Okay, this all works so well in practice. I'm going to stop screen sharing, and I'm going to give him control. Make the host. There we go.
There we go.
All right, Len, you're driving.
I have host now.
You're host.
And you should be able to.
Yep, I can
see my screen. Yeah. So first off, I want to thank both David, Wendy, and Amber for having me or asking me to be on to talk about something I'm passionate about. Reviews have basically taken over my life. Never did I imagine 10 years ago when I got into the reputation space that I think that it would put me in the position where I am now. David did mention that my career is winding down clinically. I actually moved to Florida 2 weeks ago from Philadelphia. I still practice in Philadelphia 2 days a week, so I do commute currently. It is not public knowledge that my practice is for sale, but it is. So if you know anybody looking for a practice in Philadelphia, please let me know. But it is for sale, and but I am still commuting as we speak on Sunday to Tuesday, and I return to Florida on Tuesday. So a couple things real quick. I do run the dental division for Verdi. I will talk about Verdi towards the end of this session. It's not a sales pitch. I do show a little bit about what we do and how we do it, but there's no sales pitch. It's just more educational. I don't talk about prices at all. If you want information, you can reach out to me after the workshop to set up a time to speak with me afterwards. There's certainly no obligation. I want to make sure you understand that. Number two is I did write a book. My book is called Raving Patients. I love questions during these sessions, and I see the Q&A in the chat. So if you want to go ahead and ask some questions, I will answer them at the end. And one person that asks a question, I will give a free copy of the book to. And at the end, I have an offer to purchase a book for just shipping charges, and I'll sign it for you as well. So if you want to ask some questions, please do, and I will make sure I answer them. And again, one person will get a copy of a free book. So Healing after stealing is the title of the webinar, but dealing with reputation and how to deal with negative reviews is what we're going to be talking about today. So as we move through this webinar, we're going to be talking about kind of these 4 things. Google My Business, which is the most important information on the internet, in my opinion, about the practice and how it relates to these negative reviews and what you can do about it. David and his team sent me some scenarios they wanted me to talk about. So I'm going to talk about 4 different scenarios, examples, and how to deal with them. How to generate positive reviews for your practice, which is probably the most important thing you can do. And then some messaging to referral doctors and the community about what's going on when you have some of the problems that you're dealing with here. So to begin with, let's start talking about your Google My Business and the Google My Business information that's out there. So for those that don't know what I'm talking about, this is my Google My Business page. Not a great photo in practice, but I don't select that. Google does, by the way. It changed 2 days ago, but it has 309 Google reviews on it. It has your address, it has your phone number. If you have an appointment, a place for your patients to make appointments, there's a link on there as well. They click it, they can make an appointment. But it provides your patients a little snippet about your practice, and Google looks at this information very intently. But it's also the place that you're most likely targeted with negative reviews. Google is going to be the king when it comes to that, because Facebook doesn't really have a place to write a review. It's recommendations only now. Yelp is not really a place in most locations that's very popular, only if you're in a really big city. And then there's health grades, which dentists don't really pay much attention to, or patients don't pay much attention to. So Google is going to be the place where you really get targeted for these bad reviews. Your Google My Business page is free. And like I said, it's probably the most important listing on the internet. And if you're not paying attention to it, if you're ignoring it and putting your head in the sand, you got to take your head out, because this is, every patient looks at this. You need to get your patients to put the reviews on this page. And I call the first 10 positive reviews prophylactic against the bad review. So you want to make sure you have at least 10 positives, because one bad one can really have a bad effect on you. So you got to get 10 positives first before you anything else. So there are some guidelines that came out when it comes to Google My Business. And I did some research on this when it came to employee information. And this changed about a year ago. But you want to, the previous guidelines said that you want to make sure the reviews in your business listing are those that, and that you leave for a business you visited, are honest representations of the customer experience. Those that aren't may be removed. So if you think about that, an employee who leaves a bad review are not patients, they're not customers. So you would think that you would easily get those to be removed. And then if you read the next statement, which is the other guideline, there's a conflict of interest statement, where reviews are most valuable when they are honest and unbiased. If you own or work at a place, please don't review your own business or employer. And that's both positive and negative, just so you know. But interesting enough, I discovered that in the past that Google only considered reviews from current employees to be against its guidelines. Okay, so if you were a fired employee, it didn't violate their guidelines. But luckily, in the last year, they finally updated their policies, and it looks like reviews from former employers are finally now able to be removed. Okay, so the new guideline is this: posting negative content about a current or former employee experience is no longer allowed and is considered a conflict of interest. So if you have gotten a review from a former employee, or you think is a former employee, contact Google My Business, contact myself, contact your web company and ask them to contact Google and have them try to remove the review, okay, or reviews it, okay? I will tell you, it's still a very, very difficult process to get reviews taken down from Google, just flat out, okay? You'll be extremely lucky if that happens. It's few and far between, okay? Just keep that in mind as we're talking about this. So you want to avoid that negative review as often as possible. So let's talk about these Google review scenarios that David and his team were very much interested in learning about. So a former employee, scenario one is a former employee posing as a patient leaves a negative review. So this is an example that, and by the way, guys, and I'll talk about this afterwards, I have a Facebook group called Raving Patients that people post these reviews, and these are direct scenarios about what happens. These are things that directly took place in my group. But this is a common scenario, okay, where nothing is written. It's just a star rating that's bad, okay? And this may even happen from patients. It doesn't have to be from an employee, okay, or former employee. It could be from patients. What do you do when this happens, okay? If it was an employee or a former employee, I would simply respond by stating that this is a former employee of the office and not a patient. Now, why can you do this? Because they're a former employee, it's not a HIPAA violation, okay? Now, this happened to a patient, to an office, a dean of family dental care, and I commented that she should simply place that comment on there and let Google know. And she hit the flag button, reported it as a conflict of interest, and Google literally took this down the very next day. Okay, and she commented, she says, you're terrific, thank you so much for giving the advice. Google took it down. Now that doesn't happen, like I said. It happens a lot, okay? But it doesn't happen all the time. So again, this is just an example. Now, if it was just from your perspective, if it happens with a patient, and it's a patient, you have to be careful, because then it becomes a HIPAA violation. If you acknowledge they're a patient, you got to be careful, okay? And I urge you to urge caution in responding to reviews online, just as a general term. And if you speak to an attorney, they'll tell you the same thing. And I'm not an attorney. I don't play one overnight. I didn't go to Holiday Inn and do one and Holiday Inn Express and become one. So I'll tell you right now, just be careful when you respond to a review, okay? So now scenario number two, a former employee poses as a patient and writes multiple reviews on Google, Facebook, and Yelp. So here's an example of this. So this person posted multiple reviews. This was, again, in my Facebook group, okay? The most dirty office I've ever seen, and look at the grammar here, it's crazy. The most dirty office I've ever been in, especially with this COVID-19, they're all 16-year-olds working there, no experience at all, messed up my payments. I can't ever get no one on the phone. Dirty place ever. Don't recommend this office for no one. Okay. Now, again, this dentist who put this on my Facebook group said this was a former employee who embezzled from her. That's what the person wrote. And David was actually tagged in this post. And I asked David if this person reached out, and he said she didn't. But again, I asked this person to say this was a former employee, not an office, not a patient. This has not been taken down, interesting enough. Okay. Now this person ended up posting on a second page, which I couldn't find the review. But in this case, if you have a patient that's doing that, an employee that's doing this on multiple sites, my suggestion is to contact an attorney to simply send a cease and desist letter to the former employee. Easy. Do not respond at all is my suggestion when they're simply doing multiple reviews. Just get an attorney. There's a couple different ones I'm going to talk about at some points later on, but I would contact an attorney to send a cease and desist letter. It's one time, it's going to be done at that point, because the patient, your former employees don't have the money to fight any type of lawsuit you're going to push against them if that's the case. They're going to cease and desist, take the reviews down, and I've seen that multiple times. Okay, and I get all sorts of people reach out to me. They have, they have patients who are trolling them. They have employees who are trolling them. They have, you can't imagine the stuff I hear and see. So, but my suggestion here would be to contact an attorney, but don't respond at all until you get an answer from the attorney on what to do. Scenario number three, a former employee incites several people to leave negative reviews. This is actual information that Wendy actually provided me, so I'm using Wendy's information, and these are screenshots from Wendy. I'm not going to read these. These are really long. I'll kind of paraphrase what they say, but these are some really long reviews. So this is the review, and Wendy, if you want to come off mute and you can kind of chime in, because I know that you know the back end better than I do here. but this was a bad review left by a patient who had a problem in the office. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. So this was a review that was left by you think that someone who is embezzling, is that correct?
I do. I think it was, and that my client thinks it is the former employee with a falsified
Name.
profile there that just wrote something rude.
Right. You said because there was there's no mention, no remembrance of the conversation that took place on the phone. There's no record of anything happening like this. Correct. So one of the things I do want to bring up is, I always get dentists who say a negative review is fake because they don't have record of the patient being in the office. Remember, most people who leave fake or negative reviews are not going to do it under their real name. They're going to have an alias online, okay? Because they don't want to be front and center leaving negative comments. Just keep that in mind. Most fake reviews are not fake. They could be from an employee, but they're not fake reviews, okay? Somebody doesn't say, I'm going to target this office and leave a bad review. It doesn't happen like that often, okay? So keep that in mind. But this was the review, and then this was the response from the business owner, okay? Which again, there's nothing wrong with what they wrote. The nice thing about this, when and if you respond, you always want to say you're sorry. Whether you're sorry or not, you always want to say you're sorry. It's the number one thing. And we are sorry you feel that you and your family have been discriminated against. Okay. So keep that in mind there. Okay. Now, this was another review here, again, about the Medicaid issue. Okay. A 5-star review. Now, this, Wendy, you said this is the girlfriend of the dental office, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So this was the girlfriend of the dental office. And then, so it was a 5-star review. Just so you know, one of the terms and conditions of Google is that friends, family, whatever you want to call it, should not be leaving reviews for a practice, okay? And Google probably wouldn't do anything but to set this so-called reviewer off, and then they wrote a bad review as well, okay? And that's here, okay? That's here. Correct? This is another positive review left by that same person. Correct, Wendy?
Correct.
Okay. And then the person, the employee left this review here, or another 1-star review. Right? No. So false reviews when you're the girlfriend of the doctor. So this goes on and on. This is like a comedy act going on and on and on. Okay? If this happens, something like you got to stop your spouse or girlfriend from, or whoever's doing this, stop commenting because it's going back and forth and it's causing more issues online that everybody gets to see. It's like airing your dirty laundry, okay? So do not do this. I would have asked my girlfriend, if that's who it was, to stop commenting, take it down, and just get this off because this just doesn't look good for the practice, okay? That's truly what's going on here. Stop the comments because you're getting someone who is obviously against the practice trolling the practice, and that doesn't look good on Google. Okay. Now, again, you can contest the review. You can ask Google to take it down, but there's no guarantee that Google is going to take these down. Now, here's the thing: there's only 1 review written by this person. There's 2 reviews written by this person. 2 reviews here again. 1 review written by this person. So they're newer reviewers. They don't have 30 reviews. They're not a local guy. They have no history with Google. So there's a good chance that Google may take this down. But in general, Google doesn't generally take a lot of reviews down, just so you know. Okay. The end result is if this is happening to you before you do anything, and one of my slides is out of order, I apologize, is you want to consult an attorney. Okay. I would not get involved with this. This is time when you need to consult an attorney and find out what options you do have. Okay. That is just super important to do in this case, is to get an attorney involved, figure out what your options are. When you get an attorney involved, you have to understand I have an awesome attorney I'm going to recommend who handles a lot of my clients' cases for you. I don't threaten lawsuits, just like you don't threaten a patient who writes a bad review. You don't threaten a lawsuit to them. Just consult an attorney, let them handle it, figure out what your options are. That is the best option here. Okay. Sorry, something's out of order here. Scenario number 4, and this was a hard to believe story, was a staff member with control of the Facebook page skewers the dentist after being fired. Okay, and this made news. This was in a bunch of newspapers in the town. And the story behind this is this is truth. This is in the news. You can read this. But this is, from what I understand, this was a fired employee who had access to the website and the Facebook page. And you can read what happened here. This is visible. Basically, she accused the dentist of being a substance abuse from cocaine and methamphetamines. His malpractice insurance has been canceled, and we have to close our doors. If you believe you've been mistreated by this dentist while we are under influence of controlled substances, you should immediately call the Indiana Dental Association. And there's 54 comments and 108 shares. And again, this I got online. I found this, and this was not true. And again, David would know more about this than I do. I just grabbed the information, but this person had control of the Facebook page, and there was nothing the office can do to get this down. They have to take the page down to prevent this from happening. So this is insane. Now, if this happens to you, and this is not the first time I've seen it. I've seen instances where dental assistants have put like naked photos of themselves on Facebook pages for dental offices when they have control. So my advice is, do not, unless you know the person or they're a family member, don't give admin access to them without you knowing who the person is. Because if this happens, things can go haywire for your practice. But this is true. This really happened. It's hard to believe, but this really happened. Okay, David, do you want to comment on this at all?
No. I'll just echo what Len said. Nobody but a practice owner should have admin rights in social media posting pages. If you want to delegate posting to somebody else, that's fine. Most social media will let you do that by setting up a second person to post, not by giving them your password. And if you give them your password, then the next thing that they can do is change the password. Now you don't have any password, and you can't control what they post, and that's kind of what happened here. So delegate, don't abdicate.
Exactly. I think that's great. Delegate, don't advocate. Correct. So in this case, I wanted to share with you the information on the attorney who is the premier most attorney in the United States on internet defamation. His name is Aaron Mink. He is located in Ohio. He is the founder of Mink Law, M-I-N-C, Mink Law, and he is my go-to person for anything when it comes to internet defamation. He's been on my podcast a couple of times. We've done some Facebook Lives together. He is my go-to resource, and I recommend if you have any of issues here with this type of stuff, he is the first person to reach out to. You can always reach out to me, and I'm happy to help you. But more often than not, I'm going to say, hey, I think it's time to get Aaron involved and his team involved. But he is highly, highly recommend Aaron and his team. So Mink Law, I think it's minklaw.com. So to keep that in mind, this is the guy I would reach out to. So what you need to understand, this is something I've been preaching since 2007. The best defense against a bad review is overwhelming them with a positive review. Okay, you have to get enough positives if you're going to get some bad ones. And I always say this: I have 307 Google reviews. I probably got about 20 plus negative reviews. I'm the reason I get negative reviews. I'm from New York. I don't have a filter. I get myself in trouble with things. It happens. But I always have the positives that my patients come to my defense half the time. It's usually about money. It's usually about, people think I'm greedy because I want a certain amount of money for my procedures. That's what it's about. But again, I get a positive. It makes me feel better the next day, and life goes on. You don't want to sweat the small stuff. If you've got an employee who's being a troll, that's when you need to get an attorney involved. I don't like overall responding to these reviews. Just so you know, I would keep a silence on a lot of these things. You never know when you're going to awaken a dragon that you don't want to be involved with online. Keep that in mind. Okay. I do want to share with you, for those that want to, figure out a way to generate positive reviews. I just want to show you how a product like Verdi's work. Again, there's similar products out there. If you have any questions, please direct them to me afterwards. I don't want to belabor this in this webinar. This isn't a sales pitch about Verdi, but we sync up to 98% of the practice management softwares out there. We send an automated text message under email to the patients asking for feedback about their experience. We do prevent negative reviews, and I'll show you how in a second, but we limit it based on timing. So at one time within 30 days, we limit it based on family members, one family member if 3 come in, and we limit it based on, you can turn someone off if you know they had a bad experience. When they click on the message, this is an example of what the patient sees. We hope you had an experience that exceeded your expectations and that you want to write a positive review. However, if you're not satisfied, we hope that you will contact us directly to make things right. And then the patients have options of Google and Facebook, which is green, and contact us directly is red. So it's like a traffic light. Green means go and red means stop. Just so you know, we have about 9,000 offices who use Verdi, and the red button is hit 99.2% of the time. So most people are hitting the red button. When they hit the red button, we apologize for them, and anything right is sent back to the practice. It doesn't go online,
Nice.
just so you know, okay? Now, if they have an Android phone, so that's, Samsung, we know, our systems know they have a Google account, and we send the patient only to Google. We don't give them another option. We want to keep it as simple as possible for the patient. If they have an iPhone, we give them both options, Google and Facebook. And the reason we do that is because we know that most patients have Gmail accounts, but they don't share them with you. And you're talking about 80% of patients have a Gmail account on average. But if you look in Dentrix or EagleSoft, you only see about 40 to 45% that actually give you their Gmail account. So they give you AOL, Hotmail, MSN, Yahoo, Comcast, depending on different parts of the country, SBC Global and Rogers.ca if you're in Canada, or Shaw.ca if you're in Canada. So they give you their backup email because they don't want to be spammed. So you don't think they have a Gmail account, but they do. And I'm telling you they do because I see it all the time. And the main reason why patients with a Google account don't write Google reviews is because the process is difficult. And the limiting step that prevents them from doing a Google review is that the patients have to remember their Google password, and they don't do that. They can't remember it all the time. There's too many passwords. So they stop, they don't complete the process. And that's where a product like Verdi comes in, just to show how it works. Oops, sorry, this is what happens here. And you'll see as the process runs through, they click on the link, they click on Google, and then we scan their phone and we auto log them in to write the review. So this is a one-step process right to Google from the phone. So most other products require a login. Almost all the communication softwares require this. There's only a couple other companies that have the similar system that we have. So when they hit post and you've got a new review, that's how fast and easy this is. So that's how you generate the reviews, to overwhelm them against any bad things that are going to come in. And like I said, I get bad reviews, but I got a 4.8 star, 309 reviews. I get plenty of patience on this. So that's the best way to prevent you from getting killed by an employee. Now, if you have 10 reviews and you have an employee that goes on and puts 2 or 3 bad reviews on there, you're in trouble. Your score is going to go down to under 4. So that's why you have to prepare for the worst case scenario. Now, what we do, just so you know, once we generate the review, is we put the review on your business Facebook page. We now recently released a LinkedIn integration. So we have a LinkedIn integration for business purposes. We have a microsite that we create that houses all the reviews. So this is an aggregated page, we call it. And then we put the reviews on the website. And this is just an example of one I got today, yesterday, that it shows the patient's photo, shows their name, it shows the review. It's a credibility thing here. So that's what Verdi does. Again, I don't want to beat around the bush. If you have questions, please reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about more about what we do. Now, I know David wanted to hear from me and about messaging to the referral doctors in the community. I think it really depends on what is known, what is not known. Obviously, if that situation occurred where that Facebook post came out and you had 50 people sharing it and lots of comments, I think you have to be forthright in outcoming and say simply isn't true. I will be very forthright, and David is aware of this. I had my former, and this is 7 years ago now, my former front desk person ended up actually double dipping and getting money from paychecks and getting a paper check from me, and I wasn't aware of that for about 8 or 9 months. And it is what it is. I fired her. I never got the money. But I mean, nobody knew about that, so it's not like it's public information. So it was kept quiet and under the rug, and life goes on. So I think the messaging to the referral doctors, I think, has to be based on what's out there, how many people know about it, and I think you have to, if it's out there, I think you have to deal with it and be truthful about it. You don't want to hide behind it. I think if stuff comes out that's not truthful, I think you have to address it and just spread the truthful stuff out there. I think that's how you have to deal with it. Especially nowadays with social media, things can get entirely blown up into proportions, and it's kind of whispered down the lane. Where one person says one thing and the next person hears something else. By the time it gets to the 5th person, something is totally blown out of proportion. So, that's how I would, I really think it depends on how many people, hear about it and what's being said, really the messaging that I have to send out to everybody else. So that's my answer to that question. So I want to conclusions. I know there's a lot of questions coming in. I want to make some time for some questions. So again, it's against the terms and conditions of Google and many other sites for former employees to leave reviews for the practice. I think you should definitely learn the terms of service of the review sites. So really Google and Yelp would be the two of them that you really need to kind of read up on. I would be careful how you respond if you respond, especially if it's for a patient. You have to be careful with HIPAA. You want to contact an attorney for advice when needed. But most importantly, you want to overwhelm the negatives with positives. So before I take questions, a couple of things. I have a Facebook group called Raving Patients. It's online. You can search for it. You can join. There's no sales. It's all about reviews. It's all about growing your practice. There's about 2,700 dentists in there, so feel free to join. Again, it's all content. It's me putting myself out there. I have a podcast, comes out Fridays every week, called the Raving Patients Podcast. If you want to be a guest, please let me know, but join it. We have about 4,000 downloads a month, so please listen. Again, if you don't win the copy of the book based on one of the questions, I'll pick someone. You can get a free copy of the book. You only have to pay for shipping, which is $4.95. You can go to dentalstores.com/raving free book, and you just pay for shipping. But this is the book. It's also on Amazon if you want to buy the Kindle version. It's available. It came out of last November, actually, so it's out a year now. But there's a copy of my book. And this is my contact information. My email, my address, my cell phone number is here. You can just mention this webinar and I can give you some special pricing on Verdi. Again, I don't want to belabor Verdi here, but this is the best way to contact me. I always say I'm very available. I'm always answering my cell phone. There's only 3 ways I'm going to answer it. I'm flying, I'm sleeping, or in someone's mouth. Other than that, I'm always answering my cell phone, so it's very easy to get a hold of me, and I'm super responsive on email as well. So I'm happy to take questions, and I'm here for however long it takes to answer those questions.
All right. Wow. Thank you, Len. Such incredible information there, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and join us. All right. If you're able to give me back control.
Yep, I will give you back control. There you go.
Just a couple more slides, and well, whoops. Okay, I think you have to hand the control back to me. Make me the host. Right. If you right click on my picture, I think you have that option, because right now you're the host and that won't let me share the screen.
Yep, I did it.
Okay, perfect. Then we'll, yeah, that's working. So we'll just go back to screen share for a minute. Yeah, what great information. The thing, Len, that strikes me about the ability of people to review your practice is that we really put a lot of power in the hands of any idiot with a keyboard. And
yeah,
that's terrifying. But I also love your message about, go out and get those positive reviews. And I'm gonna do some of that in a minute for us. But what a valuable concept.
Remember, patients are very powerful people because they have this. They have a smartphone in their hands, and they could be sitting in your office. You could be running late. They could, not that they have a waiting room, but there's a lot of people who don't realize that this is a very powerful device we have. You have to be careful because of that.
It sure is. So resources for tonight. First of all, Len's book. You got to read this. There's so much good information in there. The second thing is we have something, and we've circulated this in a previous webinar, but we'll offer it again tonight. It's called the Panic Checklist, and it's the list of do's and don'ts when you wake up in the morning and you realize suddenly with that clarity that comes at 6 a.m. that your so far trusted office manager has their hand in your pocket. So the Panic Checklist is available. There's an end of session email that's coming out any minute, and on there's a link for the Panic Checklist. I'll also mention again the Embezzlement Risk Assessment Questionnaire, which is free for you guys to take, and there's a link to that as well. What we've done to make it easier to leave a Google review is that we've instead of some big long URL that you have to go to, we've created a URL on our own website, prosperident.com/review us. If you like the content tonight, we would really love you forever if you would go and leave us a 5-star Google review. And a lot of the people who have attended have done that, and we appreciate it. And if you haven't so far, now that you've heard the power of reviews, we'd really love it if you did that. We'd also like to wish all of you happy Thanksgiving from all of us at Prosperident. This is one of our alumni, as we fondly call them, who took a practice for a fair amount of money. And one other thing I'll mention is that you've all gotten to know Amber Weber a little bit over the past, this is, I think, webinar number 12 that we've done. You may not appreciate all of her talents, and one of them is actually rapping. And Amber did a little Halloween rap for us, and it's a little bit too late for Halloween, but I thought I'd just bring it out anyway. So we'll do Amber's rap, and then we'll take some questions. So here goes Amber.
You better get you a hiring system so you can make sure your money don't go missing. Make sure you know who's coming and going so you don't hire a criminal without even knowing. Where did they work and what did they do? Is it all made up? Is it even really true? Pre-screening is essential for the health of your practice so your staff don't make you feel like you're rolling some cactus. So you better get you a hiring system so you can make sure your money don't go missing.
And with that,
oh my God, Amber, you are so cute. I love it.
Well, you know, it's good sometimes that we don't take ourselves just a little bit too seriously. Anyway, Amber, I know you've, in addition to rapping, you've been you've been keeping an eye on the questions. Any in particular that we should put to Dr. Len?
Yes, I have a great one for him. Are there any controls to prevent someone who is not the practice owner from creating a Google My Business or other social media account, such as Facebook, that the public can confuse for your practice?
So interesting enough, there is pages that are not your Facebook page that may appear, and they say they're not the practice's page. And I've seen, so if you don't claim your listing, patients may go on to and create a listing for you and start posting on there. And I've seen practices in let's say the rural areas that don't have a Facebook presence, but they've had patients go on those pages and write reviews and comments, and they've got like 50 comments. They didn't even know it existed because that's the only thing that exists. So people can go on and create things that are not company owned per se. So the most important thing you need to do, guys, and I was looking at the other comments as they were coming in because I do webinars all the time. So someone had asked about their oral surgeon, and they're very anti-social media, and they were concerned about bad reviews. You have to understand this is the nature of the beast nowadays. You can't ignore it. You can't put your head in the sand. So the most important thing you can do is actually go out and claim your listings. Go on to Google My Business, own your business. Go on to Facebook, create your business Facebook page with your name. Go out there and claim the listings of all the sites so you own them, so someone can't go out there and claim them. There's things called cyber squatting where people go on and claim your domain and claim your listings and then try to sell it to you. So there's some very unscrupulous people out there. So you definitely want to go out there and take control of what you own so it can happen.
The other thing too on that is that, and I'll address the comment specifically to that oral surgeon. The way that people buy things and the way that they investigate before they buy and then making a buying decision has changed a lot in the last 10 years. And the words you'll hear sometimes are social proof or social validation. In other words, before somebody decides to use you as their oral surgeon, they go online and they see what other people think about you. And that probably carries more weight than anything else in terms of their decision. So I'm just going to amplify what Len said. You cannot stick your head in a dark place here and hope for the best. You really need to take control of your reputation management and actively manage it if you want to be successful. And, maybe you're the only oral surgeon in town and that gives you the perception that you don't have to do this. And that's all fine until your competitor opens up.
So Amber, I want to touch base on that oral surgeon question, which the question was, because I think it's important. I'm an oral surgeon and have avoided social media because of the transient nature of our patients. My concern is that we will only have negative reviews as much for money or drug concerns. What do you think? I will tell you, some of my best clients, including my own oral surgeon, has like 850 Google reviews, 4.9 stars, because of what your patients love what you do. So the best defense against a bad review is simply a good review. So if you get 1 or 2 bad reviews, you're going to get hundreds of 5-star reviews. It's not going to matter. So you're completely in the wrong atmosphere here. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and Len also mentioned that there's technology that will make it easier to get those good reviews. And I think part of what the oral surgeon's coming from on this, Len, is that a lot of times if just kind of left to their own devices, the people who are going to be motivated to write reviews are the ones who have something bad to say.
But that's why you want a service to get the good reviews, because the patient won't.
That's right. You just need to sort of lower the barriers a little bit to make it easier. And I love the way Bird's Eye did it. I mean, that's such a nice system. And I know there are other options out there too, but there's technology that will make it easier for you to harvest those people who feel good about you, but maybe just haven't been given an easy opportunity to leave a favorable review.
And I want to tell you one funny story, and I think the oral surgeon will appreciate this. So I have all of my specialists in Philadelphia use Bird Eye except my endodontist. Okay. My oral surgeon has 800 plus Google reviews. My orthodontist has 300 5-star reviews. My periodontist has 250 5-star reviews. My endodontist has 3.8 stars, 19 reviews.
Yeah.
Okay. Every time I hand a referral to my endodontist, the patients always say, "Are you sure this is the one I should see?" Because the patients always look the referral up before they go there, even though I give them a card. So keep that in mind. It's a credibility thing for you. That's what it's about.
Yeah, and it's what I said, social proof or social validation. The way people make buying decisions in 2020 is they ask what other people think.
Exactly.
Hey, Len, I have a question. It says many practices offer rewards to patients for internal referrals. Is it unethical or inappropriate to offer patients a reward for a good review?
It's 100% inappropriate and illegal to offer an incentive for a patient to write a good review. You cannot do that. If Google or Yelp finds out, your reviews, plural, will be taken down, no questions asked. You cannot do that. So a gray area, and I say gray because I don't recommend it, is setting up a contest to offer, hey, if you do a Google review, I'll enter into a contest to win something. That's a gray area, but you can't give an incentive to write a review. That's 100% against the rules. Every terms and service you just violated.
And then someone else wants to know, what orthodontic software does Bird Eye integrate with?
We work with Tops, Cloud9, Dolphin, OrthoTrack, Cloud9, OrthoTrack.
Ortho2?
What's that?
Ortho2?
Ortho2 is one we do not work with. I think that's the only one that I'm aware of that we don't work with of the big, let's say 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I also don't recommend an automated process for orthodontists. And since it was asked by an orthodontist, I'll tell them the reason is because you're seeing the patient over 2 years, and the only time you really want to get a good review is when they're done with treatment. So you do it at the D-band manually. So I don't ever really like the integrations with the orthodontic software. I want a one-time send at the D-band and then at the retainer visit at the end, and that's it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Here's another question for you, Len. Do Google reviews ever expire or drop off after a period of time, or do they stay online forever?
That's a really good question. So I would have said, if you looked at my Google review count a year ago, I probably had 350 Google reviews. If you look at it now, I have 309. So what does that tell you? Yes, Google reviews can drop off. I was an early adopter of reviews. I knew reviews were important for, from 2007, 8, 9. Back then, the review said a Google user. They didn't have a person's name on it. They were anonymous, basically. Google Plus didn't exist, and there was no Gmail names back then. So when Google changed everything over, they started eliminating the ones that didn't have a person attached to it. Mm-hmm. So I lost probably 35 or 40 reviews because of that. So you will find that Google reviews do drop off over time. Google, they also drop off if you are collecting them illegally or against Google's terms and conditions. So one of them is having an incentive. Another one is if you're collecting them from the same IP address in the office, okay, or from the same location, which is in the office. You can't collect them off from the office. You can't do that, okay? It's against their conditions. If I had a client who told me she had like 120 reviews, and I looked, she had 20, but every one time she got one, another one fall off because they were doing it wrong. So yes, they fall off. They don't stay on if you're doing things against the terms and conditions of Google.
All right. And somebody wants to know, Len, 2 questions. Where did you move in Florida, and where did those cool glasses come from? So
Steve is a friend of mine from Philadelphia. So hi, Steve. So Steve, I got my glasses from Dreyfus Opticians, and they're in Yardley, Pennsylvania. He's a good friend of mine. And then I moved to Parkland, Florida. Unfortunately, that's where the big shooting took place in Stone and Douglas High School. But Parkland's a beautiful area, and shootings can take place anywhere. But I'm in Parkland, Florida.
Perfect. All right. We'll take a last call for questions in case anybody has one more they want to send in to us. Some awesome questions, and again, Len's information and perspective is just so valuable.
And David, I'll let you, because your attendees better than I do. If you want to award a free book to somebody who asked a question, as I said, please do. And they just have to give me their contact information. They can contact me offline afterwards. I can send them a copy of the book.
Okay, absolutely. I think we'll award that maybe to Dr. Chang, who asked the question about the rewards for referrals, because that to me was such a great question. So Dr. Chang, if you want to contact us after, and the email address is right there on the screen, we'll make arrangements for you to get your free copy of Len's book. For those of you who aren't the lucky winner, Len made a very generous offer to allow you to have the book for shipping cost only. Len, can you give us the website for that one more time?
Yeah, it's dentalstores.com. So dentalstores.com /raving free book, RAVING free book. And then all you do is you pay the $4.95 shipping costs, and I'll even sign the book if you want, and send it out.
Awesome. Okay, and I just included that in the public questions, so everybody can get that link. And again, if you want the book and for whatever reason you didn't catch the link, just reach out to me later, and we'll make sure that you get fixed up. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at our time for tonight. So I'd like to thank you all for hanging out with us. We always have fun with these things, especially when stuff doesn't go right. And poor Wendy had the bang and echo there at the beginning, and she managed to track down the source. So thank you for doing that. A huge thank you to Dr. Len Tau. He's a great guy to have as a friend. And as you know, we're taking next month off. We didn't want to do one of these kind of proximate to Christmas, so please enjoy the holiday season, and sit there like I am and wait eagerly for the COVID vaccination. And we will see you all in January. January is going to be a lot of fun. We're again talking about kind of the dumb and crazy things that we have seen in the embezzlement world. So we're going to have some terrific stories, And everybody have a safe couple of holidays, and we'll be back in about 2 months.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
Thank
Len.
you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you guys. Happy holidays.
This concludes this episode of the Prosperident webinar series. The team will be back soon with more tools and ideas. If you have questions about this webinar, if you would like to discuss your practice with one of us, or if there is a topic you would like to see in a future webinar, we would love to hear from you. You can contact Prosperident through its website, www.prosperident.com, or by calling 888-398-2327.